Welcome to Hello Baltimore County. I'm Ellen Kobler. Scientists have observed for years that warming ocean and air temperatures mean stronger, more devastating storms and flooding. The Atlantic hurricane season this year has been extremely devastating for the United States. We've been relatively lucky with hurricanes here in Baltimore County, but we are right in the middle of the mid-Atlantic seaboard and could find ourselves in the crosshairs. We've brought in two county experts to help us be prepared. We have engineer extraordinaire Dave Thomas from the Department of Public Works Director's Office and Fire Division Chief Ken Hughes from the county's Emergency Management Group. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Fred.
Dave, please tell us a little bit about what we're doing in Baltimore County to prepare for rising sea levels and increasing storm intensity.
One of the most important things we're doing at Baltimore County is to prepare a set of flood maps that let people know where the hazard areas are. And there's a waterfront portion of this where people are already fairly familiar. They know what's going to happen with flooding.
On the eastern side, yeah.
But what can really get scary are the riverine floodplains next to our streams, next to our rivers, and really sometimes people live over top of a storm drain culvert and don't understand that it also can flood. And that's the kind of thing that can surprise people. And we want to do our outreach and let them know that this situation occurs and to be careful of it.
All right, and you've brought a video with you that explains floodplains, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at that.
That's a video for the waterfront area, and it's some new things that are being done in our building code to prepare us for wave action and sea level rise that we didn't do prior.
Okay, let's take a look.
There are three basic coastal zones and one new zone in the new NFIP maps. The flood zone X is considered to be a low risk of flooding. VE zones, or coastal high hazard areas, are zones where high velocity wave action accompanies the storm surge and can cause severe damage to buildings. AE zones are areas affected by storm surge, but where wave action is diminished or absent. For the first time, FEMA has established another area within the AE zone called the Limit of Moderate Wave Action, or LIMWA. These moderate waves can cause damage to buildings, though they are not as damaging as the waves expected in the VE zone. Communities that adopt the limit of moderate wave action as a higher regulatory standard may earn flood insurance rate discounts.
So, Dave, in Baltimore County, we do, of course, have 200 plus miles of waterfront. We also have rivers and streams. Tell us a little bit about how these floodplains affect people in Baltimore County.
Well, if you live in a special flood hazard area, which is something shown on the maps, then your mortgage lender will usually require that you buy flood insurance. And we'll never tell someone not to buy flood insurance, even when the maps show that you're not in a floodplain when they update them.
There are a lot of people in Houston that were not in a floodplain that now their homeowners insurance doesn't cover the flooding damage.
Exactly, and we don't want to let that happen. The good news is if you don't live in that special flood hazard area, you can buy the insurance at a much lower rate.
Okay.
And that rate has been going up significantly.
Yeah, and we want to talk a little bit more about that, but first, Ken, tell us about some flooding that has occurred right here in Baltimore County people may not be aware of.
Sure. So you don't need a major storm to have flooding. We could have a cluster of thunderstorms that produce a significant amount of rainfall, and that can certainly happen anywhere in Baltimore County.
Reisterstown, earlier this year, we
for
have
example,
a photo.
and Woodlawn, for example, Cockeysville. Pretty much any part of Baltimore County can be exposed to a large thunderstorm that could result in flooding.
Okay. Dave, tell us more about flood insurance. So as you say, it's not just for people who are necessarily aware that they could experience flooding.
That's right. Mortgage lenders will require flood insurance when the federal flood insurance rate map says you live in a special flood hazard area. But if you don't live in that special flood hazard area and you're near a stream or you're near an area where you know you do get some flooding when you have a heavy storm, by all means buy it. The key is that homeowners insurance does not cover flood. Now, Baltimore County doesn't sell insurance.
No, of course not.
What we do, though, is we maintain the maps, and we work very closely with FEMA. In fact, we've gotten hundreds of thousands of dollars in FEMA grants. I called FEMA up and said I thought their maps were wrong. They got in touch with me and said, you may be right.
Yeah.
We have some money, but we don't have the resources. Can you help us?
Okay.
And for about 15 years, we've been collaborating with them. And hopefully next year, 2018, we'll be publishing a new set of riverine flood maps that should be much
Okay.
more accurate. And in general, if you see these maps, and we have them all online, and if there are any questions, be sure and call us.
And so people can go to the county website and look at these maps that are in development, or they'll be published next year?
The maps that are in development will be published next year. Right now, we have a very comprehensive website that does show riverine as well as waterfront areas. And I encourage people to look at that. The website's a little complicated, but we have a set of instructions that goes with it.
Okay.
And if you're anywhere near a hazardous area and have any questions, please feel free to call.
You call Dave personally, and you're happy to help people?
Sure.
Okay, and I know we've shown some of the maps, but we have a map that shows the whole county and just indicates rivers, streams, way down to the small tributaries, and those are areas that can flood as well. So almost everybody is near either a small tributary, or you mentioned off air, you mentioned about storm drain culverts.
That's right. On the maps, the larger drainage areas are shown on the federal maps. The smaller drainage areas are not, but they're still just as dangerous. And we have at least 2 communities, and probably more, where large culverts, where land developers put streams into a pipe in the 1920s or 30s, back when people did things like that.
Right.
And you might not see any flooding in those communities for many, many years until you get that 1% annual chance event. And then all of a sudden, you have 2, 3, or 4 feet of water around your house and you don't know where it came from.
Goodness.
And unless you bought the flood insurance,
Right. It doesn't count.
you're in trouble.
Yeah. Ken, when there are flooding incidents, can you tell us a little bit about how the different county agencies work together to respond, but also to prepare in advance?
Sure. So multiple county agencies work day in and day out in terms of preparation. One of the big components to any large-scale flooding event would be the Emergency Operations Center, where multiple agency participants come together so we can quickly resolve any issues that arise. And of course, at the street level, where our folks in the fire department and police department are navigating emergency responses, they're working together hand in hand to safely navigate these floodwaters. I think the importance that Dave is stressing in terms of preparation is key, but I also want everybody to be aware that when flooding does occur, the strength of water and its unpredictability is significant. We're advocates of the turnaround, don't drown theory. We don't want people driving through floodwaters because, as you can see from the pictures, with recent flooding in Baltimore County, the strength of water is capable of lifting cars and moving cars, and that can put people in a significant hazard.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for bringing us this information, and people will keep an eye on what you're doing with those flood maps that are coming out next year.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Hello Baltimore County. We encourage you to connect with Baltimore County government on all of our social media platforms. We'll see you next time.